What exactly is intermittent fasting? Hello and welcome back to another episode of Fasting Frankie. In this video, I'll define intermittent fasting and I'll show you an example of the fasting schedule I started with. You may have heard of intermittent fasting from a friend, coworker, or perhaps a family member. I remember the first time I heard about intermittent fasting. I was working overtime one night alongside someone I had never met, and he began telling me how his brother lost a lot of weight by adopting an intermittent fasting lifestyle. He even went on to say how he didn't do much else other than intermittent fasting. Since that conversation with my coworker, I tried intermittent fasting on and off, and finally I'm on and have been on for a few months now. The schedule I chose to start with was the 16-8 fasting method. However, I needed to lose a lot of weight, and I felt that I had to combine intermittent fasting with the right diet and move a lot more. As I mentioned in my first video, consistency would also play a major role in my success. There was nothing wrong with my approach. It was a lack of consistency that would eventually cause me to fail in the past. So let's get back to defining what exactly intermittent fasting is. Let me explain what intermittent fasting is not. Let's take a look at what many of us are told to do by many quote unquote professionals. I understand this may not be the exact eating pattern you are on. However, how close is it? Are you eating multiple meals a day? Are you snacking after dinner? What type of foods are you eating? I used to eat 2 meals a day, and you probably think that doesn't sound too bad. Those 2 meals were high in calories, unhealthy, and most likely extremely high in carbs. Although I didn't have dessert or a snack every night, I did often enough. I also started my day off with a cup of coffee. Coffee's not bad, right? It isn't, but I would put sugar in it. This pattern of eating is contrary to what intermittent fasting is. Too many meals, way too often. So now that we know what intermittent fasting isn't, let's take a closer look at what intermittent fasting is. Intermittent fasting is just what it sounds like. You fast intermittently. There are several approaches to IF. You can eat a meal and increase the amount of time until your next meal, or you can eat all your meals in an 8-hour window of time. Let me explain. In a previous slide, I showed you a typical eating pattern for many. However, with intermittent fasting, our goal is to have fewer meals in a smaller eating window. Instead of eating several small meals throughout the day, what intermittent fasting experts recommend is a reduction of meals in a shorter time. Here's a brief overview of some of the more popular intermittent fasting methods. The 16-8 approach, which you may have heard of, is consuming all your meals in an 8-hour eating window and allowing your body to fast for 16 hours. You can accomplish this by skipping breakfast and eating lunch and dinner, or by eating breakfast and lunch and skipping dinner. Another option is pushing your meals closer together. The 24 method is similar except for the fact that the eating window is reduced to 4 hours and the fasting window is increased to 20 hours. The OMAD method is pretty straightforward. Eat 1 meal a day. This is what I do most of the time. However, it took some time to build up to this. Keep in mind, this meal can be consumed earlier in the day. It doesn't have to be dinner. YouTube is full of success stories of people following the OMAD or 1 meal a day fasting method. Finally, there's alternate day fasting, a popular method for some in which they alternate eating and fasting days. For example, they may eat Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday, and fast Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Here's an example of how I started intermittent fasting. I used the 16-8 fasting method we discussed earlier. I skipped my sugar-filled coffee in the morning. You can have coffee, black if you prefer, or just make sure whatever you put in the coffee doesn't break your fast. I skipped breakfast. Fortunately, this wasn't too difficult. Even when I wasn't fasting, breakfast was easy to skip. The difference was I was starving by lunchtime. Now that I've been fasting, it's much easier to skip lunch as well. As you can see from the slide, I ate my first meal between 12 and 2. I ate my second meal between 6 and 8. I did not have snacks. I cut out sugary drinks like soda and coffee. I drank water and salsa only. I ate low-carb meals with the monitored amount of protein. If I finished my meal at 8 p.m. and my next meal wasn't until noon the next day, I fasted for 16 hours. I was able to do this 95% of the time. Remember, progress, not perfection. This may be the most popular method and the one many people start with. Let me be the first to tell you, with a little work, not much, this becomes a lot easier than you may be thinking. I was a classic overeater and someone who was always thinking about his next meal. Telling me I needed to skip meals and or wait a long time between meals was intimidating. What helped me was I started slow and ramped up to longer fasting times. I recently completed a 60-hour fast and hope to incorporate longer fasts into my schedule soon. Why are so many people benefiting from intermittent fasting? The way I understand it is that every time we eat, we trigger insulin. Insulin turns our food into stored fat. If we eat several times a day, we are constantly spiking insulin. Our bodies will never tap into that stored fat. Intermittent fasting will reduce the insulin spikes, and our bodies will eventually tap into our stored fat. This is why longer fasts can be beneficial as well. That is why I transitioned from the 16-8 method to the OMAD 1 meal a day fasting schedule. I don't want to talk too much about diet in this video. However, I will say I do combine intermittent fasting with the lower carb diet and exercise, as we've already discussed. I've made it a point to eliminate almost all sugar from my diet, both artificial and natural. I find these decisions minimize insulin spikes and keep insulin levels normal. My hunger levels are much more controlled. Okay, I hope this video was helpful and that you have a better understanding of intermittent fasting. I also hope the example of how I got started was helpful as well. I will see you in the next video. One more quick note, fasting is not for everyone. Consult a medical professional before starting a fast.